Michael, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, how
Uh,
are you doing? I think your question's not quite on what we were talking about, but just
yeah,
for anyone watching, we're quite happy to take calls about anything. Michael, what's your question?
my question is directed towards concordance. There are two things I'm looking into. The divergence of endothermic and exothermic organisms, if I have the terminology correct, correct me if I'm wrong, and the origin of mammals. The best I can find is 200 million years ago. I can't find much else other than that.
Mm, the interesting stuff would be, of course, once we move on land, is when you'll first start to see um, endothermy. Uh, you would probably have to look for, unfortunately, things like brown fat, decoupled. I don't want to get too technical on this show, but decoupled mitochondrial mechanisms for.
We can be highbrow concordance if you want to be
Well, and
technical.
I don't do my videos live for a reason. I have to do my own fact checking, or I'll say something really stupid. But yeah, thermoregulation probably became a problem as life spread into new niches, went further north, probably. But a lot of that kind of stuff you're not going to be able to pick up very well from the fossil record, the molecular mechanisms that happen. So we're going to have to look at what is known about current organisms
Hmm.
and how they do their own endothermic regulation.
Okay.
Can you be more specific?
No, I was just trying to see when about it's suspected that might have happened, or anything that you could recommend for things to look into for that regard.
Well, probably the first mechanisms were more behaviorally regulated endothermic properties. Things like
Similar to the,
panting.
actually, I was thinking similar to the hibernation pattern that we see in snakes, where they'll gather in large groups.
Yeah, yeah. Also things like vascularized fins on probably on early reptiles. That'd be the kind of thing you'd need to see where animals can either pick up or dump heat very quickly through blood sources that are close to the surface. That would be where I would probably start.
And in regards to the origin of mammals, like I said, the best I can find was 200 million years ago. Anything else you can provide in that regard would be appreciated.
2 million years ago.
200 million years
I
ago.
was going to say,
Yeah,
Sometimes,
yeah, sorry, yeah.
yeah.
yeah, sometimes I over. eh. So anything else you can provide in that regard?
What the date was?
No, not the date, but when it is suspected, any particular organisms to look into, or any fossils, anything along those lines.
No, this would have been a great question for
Aaron
aronra.
Raw or Don Exodus. Like I had said to DPR, I wouldn't mind calling in when they're on, but
Well, you're free to call back. It's something that I find very interesting as well because I think, for example, the evolution of such things as a circulatory system of blood flow and a heart and things like that, it's very difficult to for someone as stupid as me to see how that could have evolved from other things, and I think they're very interesting questions. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that Concordance is really the person that he's been put on the spot a little bit, I suppose, by
yeah.
asking
Yeah,
him.
I'm more of a
But
molecular biologist. My animals usually come to me after a short period in the blender. So what they looked like before is usually not as interesting. You would want to look for something called mammalia, or the mammalia forms, if you want to
How do you spell that
start
one?
back to that point.
Urmamalia?
Yeah, just usually means the first
Okay.
member, or what we think the first member was most likely like,
Okay.
and that'll
okay,
probably help.
all right. Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Michael. We're going
that's
to move straight on to the next caller. Give me a second. Zamira. Looks like Tinkerbell. Welcome to the show. Are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi. I recognise that voice. I think you've been a caller before.
Yes, multiple times actually.
Multiple times.
Well, I wanted to go back to the marriage vow thing because I found a bullet that was quite interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna read it out and then go wherever you want with it.
Yeah.
Vigorous opposition to any redefinition of the institution of marriage, faithful monogamy between one man and one woman through statutory, bureaucratic, or court-imposed recognition of intimate unions which are bigamous, polygamous, polyandrous, same-sex, etc.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't get is I want to ask about two terms in this, first of all. What's bigamous and polyandrous?
I know
Bigamy-
polyandry.
Go ahead.
Polyandry is when you will not find this almost anywhere in the U.S., but certain Asian countries it's still somewhat common, where you'll have one wife and multiple husbands. Usually, what happens is a couple of brothers. This is a little weird. A couple of brothers will have a flock of goats or whatever. They won't be rich enough to be able to keep a wife at home. Each, so they get together, they sort of pool their resources and have one wife for 3 or 4 brothers, and they just basically take turns, and any offspring are raised by the entire group. So one guy will be at home for a week out of every month, with the wife playing the role of husband. Weird.
So I'm being inundated now with contact requests, but the other thing that I thought was interesting, I think, and I can't find it at the moment, partly because I haven't got my reading glasses on, and at my age I can't read small print. But there's somewhere in here I think that refers to anti-pornography. If it's not in this document,
Yes.
it's certainly something that Bachman has said herself. Now,
It is.
it sounds such a simple thing, doesn't it? I'm totally against pornography. Why can't we just institute a simple law? Outlaw all pornography. No problem with that whatsoever. But the problem arises when you say define pornography. Would you like to anyone, would you like to try and define pornography?
Well, before we do that, do you mind if I read the whole bullet point where she first
Yeah, sure.
mentions pornography? Now,
Please do.
I'll just read it. The bullet point starts, humane protection of women and the innocent fruit of conjugal intimacy, our next generation of American children, from human trafficking, sexual slavery, seduction into promiscuity, and all forms of pornography and prostitution, infanticide, abortion, and other types of coercion or stolen innocence. So this is talking about not exploiting children, but there are two other, there's two other, okay, here we go. Blah, 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 resistive lure, pornography, okay. Anyway, so it's interesting the kind of notions that they tend to lump together. Like, like saying that homosexuality, a lot of people, even secular-minded people might lump bisexuality and homosexuality together, but then to link that with polyandry and polygamy, and then all forms of sodomy, I mean, they put everything they disagree with into one basket without fail. It's always the same. It's at the root of this notion of sin, is that anything that opposes the doctrine is a related offense, and often carries nearly parallel punishments or degrees of condemnation. But what really amazes me is that they, again and again and again, condemn polygamy in complete and utter ignorance of what actually happened in the Old Testament of the Bible, or hiding behind the doctrine of the Old and New Covenant. It's just ridiculous. Up until the latter half of the New Testament, where it says a bishop can only have one wife, but it doesn't say that lay people explicitly can't have more than one wife. There's nothing condemning it, and really everything promoting it. So it's amazing how detached they are from the actual scriptures in their application of this doctrine.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How do you feel about polygamy? Do you think it should be legal in the U.S.?
I wouldn't oppose it.
I wouldn't either.
That's
I mean,
most of,
if
Well, concordance by that very brief I suspect that you think that it should be opposed.
I'm just surprised to hear polygamy.
What are your views on it?
I think for the most part, it has been pretty harmful. It certainly, in practice, has been damaging to the societies, at least in the U.S., the Mormon compounds that formed.
Right. But I think there are other factors
Well,
that define it.
one second, Almighty. Let concordance finish.
Okay.
In what way is it being harmful?
Well, because it creates a displaced male population, it tends to suppress the value that women have in that society, and you get a lot of disempowerment in the women in these groups. And of course, there are other factors involved, but I really can't think of a good example of polygamy being a productive society.
Well, I think the problem is that our experience with polygamy comes from these cults, and I think that these cults, even if they were to outlaw polygamy today, would still be extremely dysfunctional. And the other thing is, like, with these polygamous cults that have become so iconic, it's the coercion factor and not the polygamy that I think merits the condemnation. And there may be, even in a non-cult society that permits polygamy, there may in fact be a lot of different negative side effects. And even if you were to conclusively prove to me, so that I had to admit that there were drawbacks, that still wouldn't cause me to ban it or fight against its legalization. I still believe that the option should be left open.
There's always going to be drawbacks to everything. There's nothing that you can say there's no drawbacks to, and because there are drawbacks, that doesn't mean that we should just ban it. Like, a lot of people want to ban drug use because there are a lot of drawbacks, but there are good things about some to most drugs as well. Some are healthier than smoking cigarettes, even. I mean...
Are you having
beating dogs is healthier
being?
than cigarettes too, but we probably don't want to legalize beating dogs.
Yeah, I think it's one of these interesting things. It's one of these interesting things that I'm interested in what concordance is saying, because my view is, in general terms, and so far as human behaviour is concerned, I have no problem with it, provided that all parties involved are consenting and are happy with what's going on. So I'm interested to hear what concordance is saying. Now, for example, when it comes to change the issue somewhat, homosexuality, I have yet to hear an argument other than a biblical or theistic argument against gay marriage, for example. And I think we've got a caller that's going to be raising this issue in a moment. But there is a situation where, other than the Bible, is there any argument that you can possibly think of that can be advanced against the idea of gay marriage?
Not unless you just don't like it. That's not really an argument.
Concordance?
No, I think there is actually some evidence-based arguments that could be advanced. Unfortunately, it puts me in a weird position of sort of agreeing with these kinds of people, which is you can find that the stability of a family unit and the I want to avoid the word empowerment. You can find that certain pairings are more equitable for everyone involved, and they are, in usually in practice, more stable, and that is based on historical evidence, based on our observations of sociology. It's not really true that every possible combination is acceptable. Then there's also the potential for abuse.
Whoa, hold on. Acceptable.
Yeah.
What do you mean by acceptable?
Well, I think you're operating on a false assumption that everyone is truly consenting.
No, I'm not. I made it quite clear when I started. I said, as provided everyone is consenting and happy.
Right. But
what sort
consenting
of?
is.
I mean, if
is
you're
a
talking
bit
about
difficult.
abusive relationships within homosexuals, then of course you've also got abusive relationships within heterosexuals. So I'm not following exactly what you're saying.
No, 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 no. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about asymmetric relationships where you have, say, one husband and four wives. Right? In that
Right.
situation, you create a non-mutual level of input. Right? You've got um, usually, just basically in practice, you've got a disempowerment of the woman in that relationship, based on every polygamous organization or culture that I've seen in history. I can't think of one where, the Chinese, the Mormons, the Arab population. There have rarely been cases where an equitable society existed around polygamy.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you because I thought we were referring to homosexuals and homosexual gay marriage.
No, but it
Yeah.
does put an interesting spin on it in that a lot of the arguments that we use to defend choice,
Excuse me.
the choice to be, um, how would we put this? The choice to allow the state to recognize a religious commitment between two gay people. A lot of the same arguments can be advanced for other types of pairings, right? We could use a lot of those same arguments in defense of polygamy, or various other types of arrangements, right? And that's, I think, the only defense that could possibly be used. And all it really says is that perhaps the U.S. government shouldn't be involved in what is essentially a personal relationship between two people.
Well,
And then,
this is a point that I wanted to go back to. I mean, by signing up to this marriage vow as a presidential candidate, is it not seriously blurring or ignoring the First Amendment?